So, we know that Trae Young has this podcast that is being launched, right? I mean, he's got this podcast. I don't even know what the name of it is, of his particular podcast, but he's supposedly going to, talk honestly about some different things and stuff like that. And we saw the fact that Trae Young in his first episodes or what have you talked about Nate McMillan on his podcast. Here's what he had to say. Quote, everyone can say what they want. Me and him had a really good relationship. You can't go to the Eastern Conference Finals without a good relationship from the coach to the point guard. Oh, okay. Well, let me put it to you like this, okay? Um, I understand. Do I think that those guys hated each other? No, I don't think that they hated each other. Do I think that they had a real difference of philosophy? Yeah, I think they had a real difference of philosophy. Now, again, if their relationship was so good, then why did everybody because Trae Young didn't speak when Nate McMillan got fired, right? He was one of the guys. DeJounte spoke, John Collins spoke, Clint Capella spoke about the idea of the message being stale. It's a message for a veteran team or this, that, and the other. Okay, if you really felt that way, then I have questions about how good your relationship was with coach. Look, Trae Young and Nate McMillan, when they went to that Eastern Conference Finals run, they could do no wrong in the offseason, right? They were the hottest things going in the NBA. They were the hottest thing in the NBA. All the Hawks are the up and coming franchise and this and that. Look how young they are. They got their young core in place, blah, 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 blah. Nate McMillan's getting the most out of these guys. And then it just crapped out from there. You don't get fired if the star player and the head coach have this great relationship with one another. Like I said, do I think that Nate McMillan and Trae Young were about to duke it out and go in the locker room and have fisticuffs and all this kind? No. But I know for a fact that basically they had a real difference of philosophy in what they were trying to accomplish and the way that they wanted Trae Young to play versus the way that Trae Young himself wanted to play. You don't fire a guy coming off the Eastern Conference Finals if things are all hunky-dory. Like I said, I mean, there's a lot of ways to interpret what that comment was from Trae Young. That yes, did they have a good relationship? I think they did at one point. Winning cures all of that, right? I mean, certainly winning, when you're winning, all of that all of those kinds of things get taken care of, right? Winning cures everything. Even Bogey said that. When Nate McMillan got fired, Bogdanovich at the press conference said, "Hey, winning fixes everything." It sure does. It sure does. If you win ball games, you don't have to worry about the coaching relationship and all this kind of stuff. So don't know that. Again, I'm 100% on board with the idea of what he said there. Like I said, do I think that they had real issues as far as a philosophical standpoint goes? Yes, I do think that they were not on the same page with one another. Hence, the coach got fired for it, right? Because they didn't live up to their expectations. They didn't build off that Eastern Conference Finals run. But do I think that, yes, did they have a good personal relationship? Sure. I don't think they were going to slug it out in the locker room or anything like that. But I don't think that this rosy picture, because again, Trae Young had a chance to speak. And I know he had a personal day that he missed when Nate McMillan got fired and all this kind of stuff that was approved. And I got no problem with that. But Trae Young could have squashed a lot of this speculation and rumor and innuendo if he would have spoken. We criticized him for not speaking at the press conference. The idea that, okay, we know you got a personal day or this, that, and the other, but you got to address it. Because when you're the star player, you're the face of this franchise. Whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, whatever like that, you're the guy that people are going to go to for the quotes. You're the guy that people are going to go to that when there's a problem or an issue and there's a difference in philosophy between head coach and player, we want to hear from the player. At this point, we can't hear from the head coach. He's no longer with the organization. We have to hear from the star player on this team. So, again, I'm not necessarily buying everything that was thrown out there, but okay. Now, the other thing that Trae Young said on his podcast here was the idea of that Quinn Snyder, and we heard this, from, we heard this from some other players that were talking about this, that Quinn Snyder has talked about the idea of taking more threes, shooting more threes, right? Now, here's the quote from Trae Young on this. Quote, I'm going to focus a lot more on shooting threes. Quinn likes us shooting a lot more threes, getting good shots, and making sure my three ball is back to where it needs to be. Well, here's the thing. From a percentage standpoint, things haven't always been great for Trae Young shooting the three ball. And obviously, he had a difficult time shooting the three ball last year. His 3-point percentage has never been outstanding. It's never been a 40% or above type of 3-point percentage. But, and I know Quinn Snyder has talked about this specifically, the idea of taking more threes. But you got to be smart about this as well. For instance, I don't want John Collins shooting more threes. I don't want him hucking up more threes because that's the offensive style or whatever that is, best for what this team is. And by the way, if you look at Trae Young's per game averages, 32.4% in his rookie year, 36.1, 34.3, 38.2. Then he was only 33.5% from three this past season. Now, the part that is intriguing is the smarter shot part, right? Because, again, I do agree that we have to shoot smarter. But I don't know that the idea of hucking up a more volume of threes is necessarily the answer for this team. I think a good balance of it, getting inside, getting outside, I think that's the better philosophy. But, again, I'll trust Quinn Snyder on all of this because it's been consistent from the players, the idea that this team should be shooting more threes. Well, okay. I mean, I don't know how shooting more threes get you a better percentage unless you're in the gym in the off season and you're working specifically on that. But it is interesting to hear some of these things about the philosophy of what Quinn Snyder is looking for in this offense, that he wants more threes, more volume of threes. And maybe he looks at it as like, look, we can shoot a lower percentage of threes, but if we make them each time, we're getting another point. I don't really know. I don't really know the philosophy on all of this. I just know that Trae Young and a lot of other guys have to shoot the three ball better. That's what, if we're going to take a bigger volume of 3-point shots, then we better start shooting the ball better. We better start finding a way to make more of those kinds of shots. Because if we're going to live by the 3-point line, guess what you're also going to do? You're going to die by the 3-point line. And at times, this team has died by the 3-point line as much as they've lived by it. And I know that's the NBA game nowadays, right? I mean, the NBA game is, the 3-point shot, right? That's the way that the game has evolved. It's not about guys taking 15-footers, always driving to the basket and things like that. It's about spreading everybody out and finding a way to stand behind the 3-point line and huck it up. I get all of that. But still, that's something that we haven't necessarily been very good at. Well, I mean, two things about it. One is we haven't been necessarily the best 3-point shooting team. And two, we've had a lot of trouble over the years defending the 3-point line. So I hope that in conjunction with shooting more threes, that we find a way to defend the 3-point line better than we have in years past. But I have heard the same things about Quinn Snyder, that they want a bigger volume of threes. Let's hope that they can find a way to actually make a few of those shots so we don't have to die by the 3-point line. All right, as you listen into Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery, make sure that you go into the comments section of whatever podcast platform that you're listening on and let us know that you're an everyday listener to the program. We like to call them our everydayers, and we thank you so much for being a part of our ever-growing community. And look, we're over a year into this thing, so we thank you so much for being a part of it. But let us know that you're an everydayer, as we like to say, an everyday listener to our show.